Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another week of Loreweek, the week with all the lore that's fit to week. I've never figured out a good way to say that, honestly. All the week that's fit to lore? Maybe? All the lore that's fit to... hang on. All the lore that's fit to bore. There we go. We'll go with that. I like it. I like it. It's incredibly terrible. Yes, Fallout 2 is what I'm referring to, Sonashi. Yeah, by the way, for those of you... So I'm working on my Fallout 2 rumination pretty much... in fact, I just shut down the game like 2 minutes ago. And I just ran into Pariah Dog, for those of you who know what that means. For those of you who don't stress it, but for those of you who do... It's okay. I have a way around that. It's just freaking really... okay, so... I'm just going to go ahead and give everyone kind of a warning here. I'm going to be talking about Atlus and Persona 5 in this lore week. I'm going to save it for last. And I'm saying that a warning because, for reasons that I will try to explain, it has so immensely pissed me off that I had to actually separate myself from it for a bit. And I actually have notes written right here on my phone that I'm going to be referring to really discuss the situation properly, because otherwise I'm just going to be ranting angrily and that doesn't help anybody. Because it's a situation. Moving on. There's one other thing I wanted to discuss. Oh, right. So I also wanted to showcase something just real quick while I'm here. This is kind of a neat little thing I found. And since I always have like a few minutes at the beginning here while we get set up. Oh, but I also want to explain something because some people didn't actually understand this. So to explain briefly. The... Hang on. My computer's like crashing or something here. Hopefully not literally. That'd be funny, wouldn't it? Alright, here's the beginning of Loreweek. Crash! Okay, no, I wanted to showcase something. Oh, yeah, so, as you know, one of the things I've been doing is I've been having links to the timestamps up in the top here. I actually can't do that anymore. YouTube is removing the timestamp thing. Look at the top of your screen, little Billy. YouTube is removing the functionality to add annotations. And as a consequence, I literally cannot actually add those little timestamps up here like we've normally done. So you're going to have to rely on the timestamps in the comments section henceforth. I've also had to adjust how I do my reviews, which is funny because I already have the next month of reviews done, which are all in the old format. So from now on, the reviews are going to have like a little pop-out thing that's like, here's a thing you can click in order to see the premiere run or the exploration. And otherwise, I'm just going to have to link it in the comments section because they're getting rid of annotations, so whatever. Shrug. So, yeah, I wanted to show this off. This is just a cool little thing. Give me just a moment while we get ready. So this is Crusader Kings 2 here, as you can see. As you know. And this is actually a mod that I looked at that I actually would kind of like to try someday. Now, if you can't tell what's going on here, this is a mod called Shattered. And what it does is it makes it, to summarize as best as I possibly can, every single county is an individual player now. There are no kingdoms. There are no empires. There's just every county is a completely separate political entity from every other county. So literally, no matter who you play as, you're playing as a duke, or a count, or earl, or whatever, of one county. And that's it. So, interesting game mode. I'm sure there's some counties that have more advantages over others. I don't know exactly what they are or where they would be, but for example, it'd be interesting to start up as where is it? Paris here, for example, and just kind of slowly spread. Just a cool little mod I wanted to showcase there. I haven't actually played it yet. I haven't had time. I spent most of this morning working on my Fallout 2 rumination. I have about a page of notes already, by the way. Thank God I'm cheating. I'm sorry. I know many people like Fallout 2, and that's great. All I'm going to say is that my old comments about Fallout 2 not aging well and not being able to go back to the old UI have been amplified. Like, I was underselling it. It's actually worse than I remembered. I am having so many problems going through that game. Anyways, the Voot is technically going on until basically the end of Loreweek, for anybody curious. And now we've been talking for about 5 minutes, which means we can go and get started. I actually only have a minuscule 3 items to talk about this week. The only reason I'm even doing a Loreweek at all is because one of them is a fairly large thing to talk about. Oh, right, that reminds me, I need to pull this up really quick here. Give me just a moment, guys. So, I wanted to talk about, first thing, hang on, timestamp. First thing I want to talk about is a game called Regalia of Men and Monarchs. I know what you're thinking, huh? You already looked at that game. That's the game that reached out to me. The developers reached out to me and said, "Hey, maybe you should do an early access look at this thing." And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I did a little thing on that. I actually asked them a few questions and gave them some feedback, and I actually got a response back. And I just wanted to kind of share that because I thought it's kind of neat. First of all, we do actually know the price of Regalia Men and Monarchs. It will be $25. It's actually already $25 on GOG. For some reason, Steam can't set the discount price early. So that's why Steam hasn't actually showcased the price early. What I mean by the discount is if you pre-order it, you get a discount of 50% off, which I don't feel like doing the math on that right now. No, that would be like $3.75 off, I think, something like that. Either way, so it's gonna be $25, and based on what I've played, yeah, $25 is probably worth it. But I do enjoy those kind of tactical RPGs. The second point was they're going to actually have a physical edition, box edition of the game, but they can't actually do that until it comes out, properly. But I wanted to share a link here, which I'm just going to go ahead and toss in the chat. You can also just look it up if you look up Regalia Men and Monarchs, and it showcases just a couple of the physical goodies that will be coming with it, which is an art book coin, world map poster, papercraft, digital codex, blah blah blah. The final thing, this is the one that really interests me, and the real reason I wanted to mention this during Lore Week. Some of you who've actually been paying attention to Regalia of Men and Monarchs, why is the music broken on the SNES, Myron? Get the emulator version. Anyways, so the release date was pushed back to May 18th, which is a huge pushback. And I actually asked him flat out why the pushback. So I want to read the response. This is word for word from one of the developers here. As to the pushback until May 18th, the question is simple. QA. After we've calculated the time required to get all the bugs pushed out, the bugs totally out of the game, it turned out we couldn't make April 27th. Or, God, this is such weird sentence structure. I'm sorry, give me a second. After we've calculated the time required to get all important bugs totally out of the game, it turned out that we could make April 27th, but the smaller problems would not be fixed until after the release, and that's not acceptable. So we decided to take an additional 3 weeks to polish the game. Bug fixing is a weird process. You push it till the final stretch. At the same time, it's so easy to underestimate the amount of work required to actually do it right. I mean, duh, right? So I just thought I'd share that. A, I completely agree with him on that, and B, I just wanted to kind of plug that. That's actually all I have to say about that. Next thing I wanted to talk about is Andromeda, Mass Effect Andromeda, because Lord knows there's one thing I like talking about more than anything else. It's frickin' Mass Effect on my show. Am I right, guys? I have like 5 viewers right now. This is great. Mass Effect Andromeda recently, just a few days ago actually, released a patch to try and make the game less crap. And I'm just going to say it like that, because that's what the patch is trying to do. Now, what I find interesting about this is 2 separate concepts that I want to talk about individually. First of all, I just want to go ahead and say, and I know that people are going to hate me for my opinion on this, and I know this because I've gotten hate comments on this, regularly. But in my opinion, the problems with Andromeda can't be fixed by patching. I mean, they could, but they're not going to be, you know. To explain what I mean by that, some things you can fix by patching. You know, oh, there's a bug here, or oh, there's a flaw here, or oh, there's a setting that's wrong, or oh, we can add in a new setting, you know, things like that. That can be fixed by patching. For example, one of the things they actually are fixing with patching is they're adding a frickin' skip option when you're moving from planet to planet, which is about frickin' time. If you remember, I actually did give the game a negative for the fact that you had to watch the animation every time that you go all the way over to the new planet. Why are we not at random? So, you know, so they have actually started patching it, and, you know, that's neat. I do want to say, well, let me say, we're not to the second topic yet. The first, some things can't be fixed by patching. They can't just go back in and patch in completely new motion captures. I mean, I should phrase this. They could, but they're not going to. That would basically be just doing another series of motion captures in order to do that in. I actually plan to, Roxymus. But anyways, so that's... I guess I'm failing at properly describing this, because the whole point is that if you have a fundamental flaw with your game, by technical definition it could be patched in, but that's not what you call a patch fix. That's something that's going to take either a complete overhaul, which is very unlikely to happen, or you're just going to live with it, and you're just going to try and throw some glitter on it to try and make it better, basically. But that brings me to my second topic, because this sounds like I'm being too negative on them, but I do want to also mention something positive about it, and that's the fact that they are patching it at all. Now, patching it at all is a positive thing. The fact that they're actually adding in some kind of things is a positive thing. However, we have the FF15 situation all over again here. As I said when I was discussing the patch possibilities and the fact that they're patching FF15, that's theoretically a good thing, right? It is theoretically a good thing that we can patch that. We have officially reached the era where you can patch a console game, and it's becoming the norm. And I predicted this back in FF15. I talked about this. Hi, Magister. We'll take some tea. And, so, you know, the fact that they're patching this in and making the effort to try and improve the game, great! But just like FF15, what we have here is a very dangerous precedent, because now we have the possibility, and I would say likely certainty, to be blunt, of the fact that more and more companies and more developers are going to be looking at the situation and saying, well, I could finish the game and release it at the deadline I want to reach, or I could release the game at the deadline I want to release, and then just patch everything in later. Assuming it sells well, of course. It has to sell well to justify those patches. But if it sells well, then sure, we'll go ahead and release it and we'll patch it. Yeah, as Larian and Bragwin both just said, that this is setting a dangerous precedent. Now, it's not exactly unknown or indeed uncommon for this to happen. This is a thing that has been happening off and on for well over a decade at this point. However, the fact that this is becoming more of a thing, the fact that this is becoming more normal, more acceptable, is part of the problem, and can lead to some issues in the future, especially since we are already in an era where developer crunch time is actually a fairly significant and hot button topic that I don't even want to talk about right now, because it is a significant problem and it has a lot of pros and a lot of cons. So yeah, we've got, and I mean, the other thing, if I may be so bold, is seeing this kind of thing with AAA development is also just kind of a head-scratcher. I mean, one of the points, indeed, I would argue pretty much the principal point of what defines a AAA game is time and money. You have the budget, and you have the time budget, and you dump them onto a game. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars and hundreds of people putting together into making a game, right? If you come out with a game called, let me just pick one off the top of my head, Stardew Valley, and you occasionally patch it in every now and again. I mean, there's still a multiplayer patch that's coming this year for Stardew Valley. That doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me if you're still patching in something for Stardew Valley, because a guy made that with however many people helped him. I don't actually know. You know, that doesn't bother me that he's still adding in content, especially since the game is functional as is. He's not fixing the game. I mean, he is doing occasional bug fixes, but he's adding on additional content to a pre-existing game that he put out. And even if he was just fixing flaws in the game, again, one guy made it, right? Or a small indie team of, like, say, 13 or so people made it. Shrug. Again, hundreds of people with millions of dollars. Maybe I'm weird, but I do have a higher expectation for that, to be as blunt as I possibly can. Now, I've actually already talked about this many times. I don't want to beat this dead horse too hard again. I really don't want to just keep hammering this point over and over again, but to be 100% blunt, I feel, based on what I've seen, that too many AAA games are just squandering the money in the wrong places. that they're putting all of those millions of dollars over here and over here and over here, and not actually putting it over here and over here and over here. Proper management, proper resource management. Maybe it's just the accountant in me. I don't know. But God's sake, sit down and figure your stuff out rather than just dumping it wherever and being like, oh, we'll just patch it later. However, again, I don't want to come off as too negative. I am actually glad that they are patching Andromeda. I'll be 100% blunt, I have no particular interest in replaying it. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. If they add in some actual new content, I might be interested. But as I mentioned, without hesitation, my single largest, hugest problem with Andromeda was the script. And that's not getting patched. So, I mean, they'll make it better. Without question, I will never deride the fact that they're making the game better. I have seen some of the new animations. I have seen some of the new models. I have seen, some of the changes they've had. They are good changes. This is a positive change. But my core problem with the game hasn't gone away. And probably won't. Moving on. Hi, Dr. Nimbus. Before I move on to Rantville, I was actually going to see what Roxime... Let me just... If I can talk about this one more time here. Marketing is really, really expensive and shouldn't be. My favorite example to use for this is actually Grand Theft Auto 5, which paid for these bus ads. Now, the thing is... Here's the catch. It is my opinion, and I do not have hard facts to back this up, but it is my opinion based on what I do know that the majority of the mismanagement of funds when it comes to AAA development is going towards marketing. Now, we do have a couple of distinct examples where they have blown way too much money on marketing. Destiny is an example that comes to mind immediately as a game that blew literally millions of dollars on a frankly bad marketing campaign. And I also believe that this is part of this is the problem that they are effectively squandering money on things that aren't worth what they are. We've got a diamond situation here. Diamonds aren't actually worth that much. They can only charge that much because of artificial restrictions on the market, right? Marketing's the same way. I use the bus ads again from Grand Theft Auto 5 as a great example that they charged a ridiculous amount of funds for those bus ads. Bus ads aren't actually that valuable. I'm sorry, they aren't. They are not actually that useful. But the metric they used in order to try and determine if the bus ads were actually useful, is how many eyeballs they predict happen to see a bus going through the city basically on a per minute basis. And so they can claim that, oh my god, you're getting ridiculous exposure. Millions and millions of people are seeing this ad. It's basically, so what they're doing is they're charging for like a billboard, which is also way overpriced, by the way, except it's a moving billboard, so they're charging even more for it. But again, bus ads aren't actually that effective. Like, historically, this hasn't been proven. There have been market studies gone that show that bus ads specifically are just not that useful, just like billboard ads are just not that useful, but they still charge way too much money for them, and therefore people spend way too much money on them, and the cycle just perpetuates. My opinion, this is one of the biggest problems that we have with AAA developers nowadays, is that they fling money at marketing they don't need or want. If I can use a weird side example here, there's a company out there called, blah. I can't think of their name. They're the guys who made the Total War series. Hang on. The hell's their name? Is that Activision? Who the hell made the Total War series? I mean, I guess apparently it's actually shifted over time. Creative Assembly? Is that who I'm thinking of? It is Creative Assembly. That's what I'm thinking of. Creative Assembly. This is several years ago. Creative Assembly reached out to a YouTube channel called Extra Credits and said, hey, we're releasing a new Total War game. Would you please teach some history about it? And Extra Credits said, sure. So they dumped some funding on them, and they put out a thing, and there was a lot of marketing buzz generated about it. Boom. That, my opinion, was a well-done, well-executed usage of marketing funding, as opposed to dumping it on a couple more billboard ads or a couple more, website slots or whatever. Just my opinion, of course. And again, I don't have hard figures to back this up. But of course, if I might be so bold, good night, Permeus, This is the internet age. I know that sounds weird, but believe it or not, this is the age where internet is actually kind of commonplace. You can tell because you're listening to me on the internet right now, whether you're watching this live or the pre-recording. And the internet marketing is something that so few companies seem to understand is actually a thing that frickin' works. It's a thing that actually spreads out. Yeah, that's true. They actually started a new feature just because of that history thing. So it's this whole word of mouth spreading through people who are interested in it, and this is actually going to be relevant because we're going to be talking about Persona 5 and Atlus later. So, anyways, I'm done. Next thing I want to talk about. I talked about that too long. For those of you who don't know, we're going to be doing a Dark Souls thing sometime in June, I believe is the time set. Dark Souls 3, specifically. We are being pretty specific about the requirements for it. But we're going to be going ahead and... God, I can't even look at this image properly. It's too large. There we go. So... You know, why don't I just copy this and paste this into chat here. There's the full list. It's fairly large. The general idea, though, is that we're going to be doing a co-op, me plus viewers, Dark Souls 3 run-through, and we've got a specific system set up for it. And if you want to be set up for it, basically you have to have beaten Dark Souls 3 in advance and be set up so that you can be summoned to wherever, and then we'll be on Discord chatting and having fun, just like we did with Dark Souls 2, and we'll just kind of make our way through. And it'll be fun, it'll be interesting, and I just thought I'd plug that. I'll actually be doing a more proper video announcing that when I have time, which I have not at the moment. It's a large image, that's why I just said, you know what, I'm just going to link it in chat. The next thing I want to talk about, this is kind of related, is Lorerunner Theatre. Is a feature that I'd really like to get started up again. Here's the catch. I want to be 100% blunt about this. I spent Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, that's 4 solid days last week, just working on one episode of Lorerunner Theatre. And I'm not done yet. Ignoring the fact that I still need input from Ultimate Paradox for King K and Roxymus for the young Yoshi, playing Roxymus. I myself haven't even recorded Jolene's lines yet. I still need to do my polishing pass, which is basically going through and making sure I didn't miss any individual lines or anything like that. And, yeah, that's going to take at least another day of work in order to finish. So that's 5 days to push out one video. This is actually why I abandoned the theater feature, because it took an absolutely hellaciously insane amount of time to do. But I love doing it. It's actually very enjoyable, and I would very much like to keep doing it in the future, so I'm asking anyone who's watching this either now live or people who are watching this on the recording to give me feedback on what you think about the possibilities of the future of the Lorerunner feature. You know, any possibility of doing more of that in the future. At the very bare minimum least, I would very much like to go ahead and go through the rest of Paper Mario 2. In fact, I've already committed to that. It's just I'm not sure when I'm going to have the time to do that, but I am going to do that. The idea would be to continue the Lorerunner feature in the future. In fact, the next game that we've already kind of slotted in to be, assuming, you know, in an ideal situation where I have the time to do that, would be Final Fantasy IX. So that would be awesome. Well, that would be continuing to eat and breathe, Eric. Also, you don't get a say. You don't give me money. I mean, you give me $1, but that doesn't give you any voting power. Yes, El Cano's Buff Bars, Little Billy. So, yeah. I just thought I'd kind of mention that. I don't actually know when it's going to go live. In fact, ideally, I don't think it will go live until I have all of the rest of Paper Mario 2 done, which is going to be 2, 3, 4 more episodes after that. 4 or 5, I'm not actually sure. It depends on how we do the final chapter split out. So, just thought I'd mention that. But for now, I am basically abandoning production of that because I really, really, really need to get May's videos done, so that's what I'm going to be doing next week. So, yeah, plugs. Let's go ahead and move on and talk about something I really don't want to talk about, if I'm being 100% blunt, and that's Persona 5 and Atlus. Now, let me just go ahead and start with the emotional. It pissed me off. When I first heard the news, when I first read their thing, it pissed me off. It was a pure gut, visceral, emotional reaction. And it took a while for me to really rewind myself and try and actually have a intelligent answer to it rather than just a purely gut emotional aspect. I'm going to read to you word for word that what Atlus USA posted as a note to streamers, okay? This being a Japanese title with a single playthrough story means our masters in Japan are very wary about it. Sharing is currently blocked through the native PS4 UI, however, if you do plan on streaming, video guidelines above apply except length. If you decide to stream past the 7th of July, which is an in-game date, all caps, bolded, I highly recommend not doing this, you have been warned. You do so at the risk of being issued a content ID claim or worse, a channel strike or account suspension. Now I don't feel like I need to add anything here, to be blunt. Ignoring the fact that, you know, Jim Sterling has actually already covered this. I don't feel like I need to add this. This guy, these guys, can go burn. However, I actually wrote down notes. I'm going to go down this in order and try to discuss this in as calm and as civilized manner as I am possible to without just ranting and screaming. First of all, have any of you heard of the Streisand effect? Back in 2003, Barbra Streisand, singer, was like, hey, people were taking photos of my house. Don't take photos of my house. Don't take photos of my house. Oh my God, whatever you do. And she did this very large public campaign to try and remove the photos of her house and even tried to sue people about going after her house. For those of you who don't understand the significance of that, if you go way out of your way to try and hide something and say, no, don't look at this, whatever you do, don't do this, whatever you do, don't look at this, there's nothing here, there's nothing here, what you're going to do is generate a significant amount of interest in it. You're going to generate more people wanting to know what you're hiding than you would if you just said nothing, or if you just hid it quietly. If she had just, for example, in Streisand's a case, if she had just quietly been like, hey, probably wouldn't have been a big deal. This is exactly what Atlus has done. They have gone way out of their way to highlight the fact that they're trying to avoid spoilers for their games. Now, I want to stress something, by the way. I legitimately don't know if their actual motivation is to encourage people to avoid spoilers. I suspect it's not. In fact, me and Pax discussed this issue at length, and he and I kind of came to a consensus on what we think is actually going on. But their stated reason for this is we want to avoid spoilers for our games. So their stated reason for pushing this is to try and avoid spoilers for their game. And naturally, the most logical possible way to do that is to say in big, bold caps letters, do not spoil this game. You will actually be... And actually to threaten people... Threaten people's livelihood with legal action, which is actually illegal, by the way, although we're not getting into that yet, in order to try and hide it. There's actually a pretty good chance, I agree with Jim Sterling on this, there's a pretty good chance that the majority, percentage-wise, of people and streamers, if they had just said, please don't stream the ending until such and such a date. Okay, sure. I wouldn't have paid attention to that, but I'm sure several other people would. Oh, by the way, I was actually planning to do a premiere run of Persona 5. I was ready, all set to buy it and set it up and do a full premiere run of the game. Because there was a sufficient demand for it, some people had donated for it, and the end. You know, it's my job, right? That's not happening now, by the way, just to make that clear. To make this clear, this is not just them going after Twitch. They are going after YouTube as well. And they're also not just going after streams, they're going after cached, you know, pre-recorded videos, just to make this 100% clear. They're going after everyone. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. Now, this is what I like to call the used videos argument. The used videos argument is something that came up several years ago. It's actually come up 3 times that I know of in my lifetime. It might have actually come up before this. I don't know. It might have come up more than the times I have noticed it. The used video argument is, we're a company, and we sell you this pen. Now let's say you decide to either lend, give, or sell this pen to someone else. Well, I don't get any money for that. Therefore, that's wrong. There's so many things wrong with this statement that I'm not even going to go into it, but that is the used video argument in a nutshell. Because the most commonly stated reasons I've ever heard in defense of what Atlus, to be clear, Atlus Japan, not Atlus USA, is doing with regards to this, is the exact same argument. I've actually heard this for over a year now. It's just a very quiet argument that hasn't gotten a lot of traction because, well, I don't know why, actually. Now, let me get my opinion out first. I absolutely disagree with this argument. However, in the interest of fairness, I do want to make the case of the argument itself to let you make up your own mind. The argument is, roughly, well, people are just going to watch our games and not buy them if people do Let's Plays and premiere runs and otherwise stream them. That's the argument. Now, there are legitimate reasons for thinking that. There are certainly people who are not going to buy a game because they can just watch it, because there are certain games out there that are far more functioning and inclined towards watching a story rather than playing through a story. I personally disagree with the idea that you can just watch a Final Fantasy and get the full effect with it. My opinion. But I also have to say that I personally believe very strongly that you actually lose a lot of the experience if you don't play through a Final Fantasy yourself. Just my opinion on the matter. But I can at least understand in an abstract the idea that some people might actually prefer to watch, say, Final Fantasy VI than to play it. Okay? So I can at least understand that concept in an abstract. Here's the first of many reasons why that concept is immeasurably wrong. First, speaking statistically, and there have been studies done on this, if you are someone who has decided not to buy a game because you want to watch it instead, you're likely to have never bought that game. Put it to you this way. If your options are, reduced to... okay, if you have a choice of buying a game or watching a game, and you choose to watch a game, the group of people who go to watch the game, of that sample size, if you removed the ability to watch the game, a very small percentage of that group would then go buy the game. Because that mindset is already in the, I'm not committed. Either they don't have the system, or they don't have a PC that's good enough, or they don't have the interest enough to spend the money on it, or maybe they'll get it on sale. They'll pick it up as a sale buy, right? In other words, while you are probably losing out on some sales, absolutely, for people who are playing your game and letting other people watch it rather than play it, it is my very strong opinion that is backed by data, which I'm not going to pull up right now because I don't feel like it. You know what? I don't need to support. I don't need to defend my arguments. It is my very strong opinion, end of sentence, that is a falsehood. That you are not actually losing out on a particularly large amount of sales. However, the argument as presented with the used video argument, the used movie argument, is always presented as if 100% of those people who did not buy the game new, who did not buy the movie new, have therefore are counted as lost sales, and they always use it that way when it comes to accounting or when it comes to budgeting. I've actually seen companies do this, again, mostly with regards to movies, but I've seen a couple game companies do this too, where they say every used game that is put out there is a sale we lost. Every YouTube video that showcases our game is a sale lost. Every single view of one of those videos that showcases the story of our game is a lost sale. And that is bluntly, fundamentally wrong. Again, I will freely allow that they are probably losing out on some sales because of that. But not enough to completely nuke the goodwill of trying to regulate a free economy. This is completely ignoring the fact that I have a vast experience over the last 5 years of people coming to me saying, thank you for streaming blah blah blah, I decided to buy it. Which brings me to my next point, by the way. I know, again, I don't have data or facts on this one. However, I have seen many instances in my real life of me showcasing a game Not just on the show, but just showing a friend a game, or showcasing a movie, to continue with the movies argument, and them saying, that's awesome, and going out and buying it. This is literally word-of-mouth marketing, which, by the way, costs them nothing. It literally costs the company nothing to have this kind of word-of-mouth marketing. I want to stress that word literally, because it doesn't cost them any money that they have to spend on it. It doesn't cost them any time budget. They don't have to allocate people or resources to do it. All they'd have to do is produce the game. Expenses ended. And again, this is both time and money expenses. I'm counting both here. And then word of mouth spreads, and then other people get more interested about the game, and some of them buy it. And some might still buy it as a sale buy. Some might still buy it as a brand new buy. Yeah, I wasn't even going to bring up the piracy part of it, Lurker, because I get really, really pissed off about how fundamentally wrong several companies tend to be about what piracy actually is and how it affects them. Let me make this clear just really quick. There is a real problem with gaming piracy, and there has been for 2 decades, but companies don't seem to understand that or what it is, and seem to completely just jump in the opposite direction of it. So, moving on. Hang on, I gotta get back to I'm getting too pissed off. This is why I made these notes. Okay, so, right. So the argument has been stated that there should be legal... I've actually heard this. The argument has been stated that there should be legal law put down regarding Let's Plays. That there should be a law that is set that dictates what you can stream and how you can stream with regards to certain games in order to regulate the situation, in order to try and ensure that that there's no used sales, basically. Again, it all goes back to this exact same mentality. I know this is a pen. You have to use your imagination. It's this thing up here. Just figure it out. But if I... Actually, I'm sorry, really quick. I just want to mention one thing really quick, by the way. Weird question. How many of you know what it's like to be accused of something you haven't done? Now, I know everyone takes this in a different way, but when I'm accused of something I haven't done, it pisses me the hell off. Like, it actually pisses me off if you accuse me of something that I have not done. I mention this because one of the most common causes for certain people I know personally, who I will not name, for them deciding to pirate movies... This is actually many, many years ago, so this is kind of well out of date at this point. But they were pirating movies because at the beginning of the movie, if you actually bought it, there's this big, unskippable, cannot bypass it message saying, "Warning! Legal warning! Piracy is bad! If you have stolen this film, you're a horrible person!" And just trying to guilt trip the viewer into as if they had stolen a film that they just went out and bought. Now, if you don't understand the significance of that, the pirated versions of those movies, cut that part out. That brings me nicely to my third point. Attitude matters more than I think most people understand, especially from a corporate perspective. I have been under the impression for many years that some companies, when it comes to their PR department or when it comes to their legal department, they assume that other people function as a business rather than an individual. What I mean by that is when a business is threatened, they don't knuckle down. They don't double down. They don't go, "Oh, God." They react in a very predictable manner. You know, if you as a business threaten something legally at another business, the other business is probably going to respond in basically one of two ways. The way you want them to or the way you don't. And both ways are dealable. And it's all just kind of nice and civil and blah, blah, blah. However, when you threaten an individual, that usually doesn't really get the response you want. And this is my third point. I'm going to read this one more time here. If you decide to stream past July 7th, I highly recommend not doing this, you've been warned. You do so at the risk of being issued a content ID claim or worse, a channel strike or account suspension. That is a threat. That is, there's no question about this. There's no getting around this. There's no trying to technically your way out of it. That is a flat-out, legitimate, bald-faced threat. And it's a threat we know that they have carried forward on, because one of the reasons this kind of started coming to light is because certain people started getting hit with this. That is not just a threat to an individual who's doing it for fun, but for certain people who do it as their jobs, like me, that is a threat to your very livelihood as a business. Your ability to eat and sleep at night. When you threaten an individual, there's a lot of different ways they can react to that. But one of the most common I see is defiance. In the wake of this, by the way, I have seen so many spoilers about Persona 5, and I admit that this is nothing more than spite. But out of pure actual spite, I encourage that. Because screw them. And that's my reasoning. That's the emotional reason. That's why I had to kind of separate this a little bit. Because people have responded to this by spreading spoilers far and wide across the internet. And by the way, that's me saying this. I am very anti-spoiler in my policy. I actually have a whole thing about it was his sled, and I specifically use that because it is still possible to spoil a 20-year-old game, and I've seen that in action. So I try to be very anti-spoilers and very spoiler-friendly, basically. But the other reason this pisses me off, in addition to the obvious threat problem... Oh, by the way, if anyone wants to post spoilers about Persona 5, go for it. So, the other side of this... This is like the only time I'll let you guys spoil something. Take it or leave it. This is the only time I'm letting that door open. What they are doing is basically actively wrong from a moralistic perspective and from a legal perspective. What they are doing is they are using their stronger legal backing to try and threaten people with copyright strongs and content ID, knowing that it's totally okay to look at the situation and say, hey, why not, I'm sorry, I got derailed because of chat. Give me just a second. I'm sorry. I hope you guys understand how much this angers me of what I just said. I really hope you get it. I really do. I'm trying really hard to separate myself from how pissed off this whole thing makes, because what this is doing is this is actually bullying. This is legitimate 101 textbook case of bullying. They have a bigger legal department, and so they can force something that is actually illegal if someone was actually able to manage the legal backing, which is mostly just a matter of money, in order to fight them on it. If someone is actually able to get together a lawsuit and push back against them, then they would win. Because you can't claim a content ID or a copyright strike based on fair use because you spoiled something. That's not legal. It is literally, flat out, misuse and abuse of the legal system in such a blatant and overt way. I'm reminded, I need to pause. I need to pause. I'm reminded of Smash Brothers. You remember Smash Brothers? The latest one, the one that came out on the Wii U and the 3DS. Their stated reason for not having a story mode in that was because, it'll just be spoiled on YouTube. You remember that? Now, when I heard that, I actually didn't believe it. Like, I legitimately looked at that and said, that's just lies. That's just some kind of cover story. There's some kind of other actual situation that's going on. That's why they're not having a single-player story. Because that's ridiculous. That is actually bald-faced ridiculous that is their reason for doing that. Since then, I have kind of modified my opinion. This is not the first instance to happen between then and now. I have seen several other things with regards to the Japanese culture where they seem to not understand how YouTube or the entire reviewers, let's players, premiere runs, streaming community and business works. And so they seem to come out as like, well, we need to fight this with all the power at our might, despite not understanding there's actually nothing to fight here. Now, let me go ahead and make this clear. I am actually fairly anti-spoiler. You know, I'm going to use an example, and I'm not actually going to share the spoiler that happened, but I was going to a movie theater once, and as I was going to this theater, this was a couple years ago, there were people who were driving by the lines leading up to the theater, leaning out the window and shouting spoilers at people going by. To be clear, that's bullcrap. And that is completely unacceptable. What in the hell is wrong with you, where the only possible joy or enjoyment you can get out of your life is trying to reduce the enjoyment of other people's? Because that's what that actually boils down to. Think about that for a moment. Now, I bring that up because both sides, in my opinion, are wrong. The extreme spoilers and the extreme anti-spoilers. What a surprise. I am certainly, again, pushing more for moderation in the situation. Again, if they had just come out and said, we'd kind of like you guys to not stream past a certain date for like the first week, I would have said, okay, you know what? Sure, I'll wait a week. Why not? And again, keeping in mind, by the way, that this thing is 6 months old. This game came out 6 months ago, by the way. If you wanted to look up the entire story right now just on Wikipedia, which isn't exactly like a spoiler site, you could. It's been out. It's just the English release came out last year, or last week, excuse me. So, you know, whoa, right? But if they had just said, we would like you guys to avoid spoilers in the first few weeks, sure. We would like you guys to avoid streaming past a certain point early on so we can get those initial sales, sure. Flat out, illegally bullying and threatening people? Which brings me to my final point. In my blunt opinion, this is unacceptable. I think I have made my ire quite clear. I hope I have at least made my point as to why I feel that way. I don't like to just say what I feel. I like to say why I feel that way. I hope I have successfully gotten across that because I am sufficiently emotionally invested in the situation, in a game that I don't care about or like, by the way, that it's hard for me to actually calm myself down and then think from a purely intellectual side of things. So, for the first time ever, all Atlus games are now on the forbidden list. I will not stream them. I will not ruminate on them. I will not take any requests for them whatsoever. Now I know what you're saying. Oh, whoop-de-doo, you don't even like Atlus games. That's true. I don't. Last year, I did a rumination on Persona 4 and SMT, Shin Megami Tensei 4. I have also played quite a few of them previously, including Nocturne and several of the Digital Devil sagas. But I am officially locking down on Atlus. I am reasonably certain that there's no requests coming in the coming year that I will have to decline, but it's not happening. This is a line in the sand. I should check that really quick. I should make sure that I don't have to tell anybody I have to decline their request for this coming year. Yes, Radiant Historia is an Atlus game. It's actually the only Atlus game I've ever enjoyed. No, I'm not going to delete them, Zoan. I'm not that petty. Hang on, let me verify. I actually feel like Radiant Historia might be on the list. It is! Jinja Ninja requested Radiant Historia for the coming year. I'm gonna have to get a hold of Jinja Ninja about that. Regardless, that's not happening now. Boom. Moving on. I don't actually have anything else to share about this at the moment, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut off the Loreweek. I imagine I'll get a lot of negative comments on this week's Loreweek. So